Hi, this is Sally Wood for Be Inspired, and today I've got yet another pair of chairs to do. I undid the top of one of the seat cushions, and I have a centre already marked here, which I'm going to line up with the side. It pulls out, so I'm going to move that over to 11.5. I assume that would be big enough. Well, it is there, so I've put that at 11.5, and I'm going to pin that into place. I'm a little bit short for fabric, I think, so I'm going to carefully cut this out. Oh, this fabric also has a pile, so I've had to make sure the pile is going down. Always check that before you start anything. I once years ago got very tired on a project and actually cut something upside down because I hadn't realised that the piece I was cutting was upside down. So here's that. And again, I'm going to measure that to 11.5 from the outside. This is so that it's nice and centered. As I say, I'm a little bit shy on fabric, so I'm going to have to be very careful. And again, pin that into place. Make sure it's nice and tight. You can iron these back out if you want. I mean, it's really up to you. There's that. And I'm just going to pull all of these seams out. Once I've got one cut, I'll use this to cut the rest. And because the seams keep going back, I'm just going to pin all the way around. This is like a suede and it's a little bit awkward to pin through. So always make sure you pin where the seam is and not into the centre. If you do that, you might end up with pin marks which might not go away. When everything's pinned into position, put my centre mark in and then cut on round on the outside, and I'm actually pushing down the seams until I've got the whole piece cut out. So I've just measured this up to the narrowest point here, 6 inches, and I'm just cutting down here on the fold so I have a nice straight edge to work from. I'll do that all the way across. I'm going to use that for the front border on the chair seat. I'm going to, on the bias, so here's the bias, cut some piping, and because I'm sewing it in, it's going to be 1.5 inches wide. I think I'll cut 2 lengths just to start off with because I need to see how many pieces go around the chair seat. I've got the arms to do and the back. I've got quite a bit of piping to do, so I will cut that out as I go. I'm going to make some piping up. I know it's on a diagonal, but still make sure your pile goes down on all parts. Sometimes you might have to put a little nick in there to prove which way goes down, but usually you can work it out. Pop that onto there. We'll be sewing corner to corner on a 2.6 and then join subsequent ones up, fold it over and join the next piece up. Then just add as many as you want. I usually just make up what I need for the part of project that I'm on. I like to use a piping foot. It's got a groove. It keeps everything in place when you're sewing it. Now, starting with the pile going down on the fabric, fold the piping cord into the corner like that and pop it underneath the foot. I'm going to extend it to a number 5, the longest stitch. I usually leave a little bit behind so that I can, if it doesn't start pulling through, I can help it. There we go, and I'll sew to the first join. As I come into the join, snip the pieces apart, cut the fabric back to within 1/4 inch of the seam, open it up and make it flat, fold it round and sew. When you get to the join, just make sure that everything is in flat and that it's pushed hard up against the piping cord. And carry on sewing to the next join or to the end of your length that you want. Okay, I'm going to put this on the outside of the seat cushion. I've checked to make sure that the piping doesn't have a join midway along the front. In fact, it's just around the side. I start at the back of my seat cushions, just the way I was taught, leaving it on a number 5 and sew. The chair seat has curves, so I'm going to curve up here When I get to the top corner, I'm going at a 45-degree angle, sew to the corner and stop when I think I'll get there. But I always check, lift the foot up, turn the fabric and the piping, and if it all lines up, sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. I need to go one more stitch. Always check, pull that back, put it into position and sew on round. Because I cut the fabric for the piping on a bias, it should just roll in without needing any nicks, like in dressmaking. Now, because the previous cushion didn't have piping, I'm going to lay it out on top, and if I need to take any alterations, I've only messed up one side of a seat cushion, not all four. When I get to the front, I'm going to do the same, cut in at a 45-degree angle, sew to the end, check, see if everything pulls in, and then on round. Now sometimes, even though you cut the fabric on a bias, you might still need to clip it, but I think I'm okay on this one. Now when you come to the join where you want to join it, go over 2 inches at least and cut, because that's where your join's going to be midway. So I've placed this over here, and for the most part it fits at the back, fits around the side. I think it'll do. The seam for the front comes down. Sometimes you need to check things. Yeah, it comes down a little bit above where it does on the front of the original, and I took it in slightly because I was thinking it was a little bit out. The thing is, when you put a cushion in, you don't want all the piping to be down the side and not showing. The whole idea is that you're making a feature of something. I think this is going to work. I'll put the piping on all of the tops. I lined the centre of the band up with the centre of the cushion and sewed it in, and I got all the way around to the top edge here, and I want to put the other side in, so there's the top. So line the 2 tops up. Now the side border I'm going to fold in half like this and just slide it in between the 2 pieces. If it's in the centre of the side pieces, I can see where it comes up to on both pieces like that. So I'm going to pop that back down on there. So the top's there. Here is where it joins. So I'm going to pop this over onto this side like that. Pinch it in place as I work my way down. Make sure all the raw edges are together and slide it under the foot. Move, if you can, the needle across, just one, and sew into position. Because it goes all the way around, I'm not going to worry too much. There we go. And the first part I'm going to have to line in is the corner. So I'm going to fold that along the corner here, bring the fabric out so the raw edges are equal. Pop that into place. I'm going to hold that firm because I don't want it moving anywhere. You could pin it, that's up to you. I'm almost at the corner, so I'm going to cut the border in at 45-degree angle like that. Bring it in, needle down, foot up, and twist into place. Now if I've got this wrong, I will have to unpick it and redo it. Foot down and then start sewing. Because it's got a rounded top, it doesn't want to go in flat. As long as your front border is straight, you can roll this into it. Let's get a little bit closer. I'm going to line up my... Oh, they match almost perfectly. I need to pull the top slightly to get it into place, allowing it to straighten up as it goes. And it's within a little bit. Pull it a little bit more, and I'll pull it a little bit towards this end so that it should be even. That should take up some of the slack there. And roll this into place as well, into the corner. As I get there, I'm going to cut 45 degrees along the border. Because this should be a 1/2 inch seam, I go just over 1/4 inch for the cut in, so I don't cut too far. You can always cut in further after it's all sewn into place, but if you've cut too far, you have a horrible gap in your sewing if you're not careful. And yes, I have done that when I was young and enthusiastic. I'm just going to sew that up towards the top. And now I can use that method to sew the second side in. So I'll fold the fabric in half like that. I only have to go halfway round on this one. Put the corners together up there. Now some fabrics warp, especially if it's a chenille or a velvet, so you might not be able to use this method. You might have to go from corner to corner in. There's where the fabric joins there. Roll it across and pinch it into place. Move your positioning down a little bit. Once it's in position, pop it underneath the foot, lower the foot and start sewing into place. As you get towards the bottom corner, fold the fabric along the corner, moving the border out like that. Make sure the border's running evenly. The raw edges are even here. Pinch where your corner is. Place it on the corner You can see it's a little bit kinked in, but that should even out. The side of the chair is slightly shaped. It comes in and then it goes out slightly. So that will all go into place as I sew it. Now I haven't let go of where I pinch the fabric until I get nearly on top of my fingers to that release. Cut your 45 degrees in, bring your fabric down, needle down, foot up. I only have to sew to here, roll that into position like that, put the foot down and sew. And again, because it's arced, it will look a bit wonky in places until it's all sewn in. The key to sewing curved seat cushions is to keep the border as straight as you can and then work your top or bottom into place, and it should go in nicely. I'm having to be really creative with this chair because we've run out of fabric. The border actually has joins. You can do that. I am going along the grain of the fabric, so the pile goes down and that's the way I am going, and hopefully if I do both the same it should go evenly. Run that on the inside there, so this runs along the fold, and start it off. I'm going to extend that to a 5. Fold that over about 1/2 inch, fold that onto it, which is about 1/2 inch from here to here, and sew into place. Sometimes with a fabric with a pile, you can't sew straight here. You have to pull it in at an angle. So the foot is always pushing against the teeth of the zip, and then it goes in straight. Make sure your seam is open if you've got one. And sew to the end of your strip. Made the two pieces even at the top. They might alter as I start sewing. And when I put the second side in, I tend to let it twist up. That allows for this to fold down behind the new fold that I'm making. It should cover the teeth. And again, work all the way down to the end. As you can see, the teeth don't show. There's a join here and a join here. Nobody will really take any notice because it's at the back of the cushion. And now I've got to do is put the new zip on, which sometimes takes me hardly any time and sometimes takes me a long time. So what I always do is try to find the top tooth in the zip. This side has the top tooth. I'm going to just rip that open, slide the slider on, peel the fabric back like that. Make sure the handle is going down because it has teeth on it and it will stop it going. Push that one in to where you think it lines up, might be there, and push that down. And sometimes they don't do what you want them to do. Push that down and pull. And there's two teeth, so I've got to move it up one. It might take a little while, but that's how you put them on. If you haven't checked at the top, you can always tell because there's slightly more of a gap on one side, which always tells you you've mismatched the teeth. Take that off and start again. I'm just going to show you how to join piping. I'm going to undo a few stitches so I can open this side up. Don't cut the fabric. I've done that before. It's not good if you do that because then you have to be really quite creative. I sewed that a little bit close, so I'm actually going to undo some of these stitches too. So that's open. The way I'd sewed it already has this at that angle. And the angle I need to take it from on this case is right from here. So again, I'm just going to undo these stitches. Usually if you get your scissors in at a point, you can scoot them along and they'll cut the stitches without you worrying too much. Pull all of that out straight, cross that over. This is where I'm going to fold my fabric. So I'll fold it over like that at a 45-degree angle because you need these seams going the same way. There we go. That should have about 1/4 inch seam allowance. Fold that over so it makes it easier to do, which is about your foot width from here to there along the outside edge. Remember to shorten your stitch. I've got it on a 2.4. I'm going to double check that. Make sure that if I lay that out flat like that, it goes into place, which it does. The next thing I'm going to do, open that up, lay this out, and I'm going to cut that back at a 45-degree angle, and also the one underneath. They butt up against each other when they're in place, and then you don't have a huge amount of bulk. Once that's done, I'm going to pop this under here. I always do it separately. I prefer to make sure I've got everything where I want it. Fold that all over, sew the piping like any other time. And when I come to the join where I want those two to be, I'm going to push them in together. I'm going to also make sure that that seam is flat because I want it nice and tight. Push that in behind the other. Remove that. Go back to where you stop stitching. Also make sure all your threads are on the back side, so hopefully you don't have so many threads to cut out later. And then sew this in position. So that's that side sewn in. I've got my centre marked there. And I'm going to work out the centre for the zip border, which I'm also going to mark either side. So now that's done. Place your zip up and your border down. Match your centre marks. And I'm just going to sew this into position. Actually, I need to move that over one. I've just moved the needle across. When I come to sew it back, I will make sure that I go over those stitches. And then it will cinch it in nicely. You can see this one shapes this way, so I'm just going to pull it in so it goes in flat. There we go, like that. When I get to the corner, I'm going to nip it in, so that helps it go around the corner. Take it into the corner. If you need to, just check, lift your foot up, and I've got 2 small stitches to do. Now that takes me to the corner. So all I'm now going to do is twist this around like that, make sure the piping's going out, and pop that into place. And sew about 1 inch to 2 inches, say 4 to 5 centimeters. So I'm straightening out the border, making sure that the outside edges are more or less even, like that. And I'm going to fold this over. I actually need to take that a little bit further back. It's usually 3/4 of an inch if you're only doing it once. So I'm going to fold that back. This fabric does not fray, so I don't need to fold it back underneath. I'm going to pop that there. Reverse, and I'm going to sew all the way to the center, keeping that even, over the zip teeth, back over, and then forward. Line that up so that that keeps its distance, and across. Although this is short, it won't matter, it will just hide in there. Now while I'm there, I'm going to do the same with the other side, because I know that that goes over quite a way. I think I can straighten that one out. I'm going to do the same this side. If you go over the stitching twice, it holds everything in place and it puts less stress on the zip when it's opened for putting the cushion in or out. Whilst I've still got this one in, I'm going to do this side. Undo this. Each upholsterer has their own way of doing things. Having undone some of it, I'm going to cut that back, cross that over and cut that back. Sometimes I've given a really nice generous crossover, so it might be more than just those corners that I cut, but invariably I'm spot on. Put it down to 2.6, fold that over and put that into place, then sew down. I will try that. Sometimes I'm wrong and I have to undo it and either take it in or let it out. I think that's perfect. I'm going to close that up, put that back underneath. Take it back to the top if you can, so you overstitch your stitches. Roll that up and bring that into place. Once that's done, I'm going to measure out the fabric like this, so it's equidistant. So the fold here and here is the same as the fold at the bottom. Maybe that needs to go up a little bit more. Also check to where the top will be going. So the top of the piping here is level with there. That all matches up. I'm going to pop that underneath too. I'm going to pull from the other side, make sure all of that goes in. Now when you start sewing from this side, pop everything into place and reverse first. The reason why you reverse first is it should have caught onto the fabric underneath and it shouldn't walk when you move forward. It should be held in place. And now I'm going to move all the way forward. If you've got bulky fabric, it sometimes walks and you don't want that happening. I have a seam here, so I'm going to keep that flat, work into the corner. Just as I get to the corner, I'm going to put my nick in so I can turn the corner. Needle down, foot up. Double check, yeah, that's close enough, and swing it all into position and sew into place. Now I've got a centre mark here and a centre mark there, and if I line them up like that, and they should go in. If it's walked slightly, it won't matter. It's basically in line. The amount it's moved is negligible. So I'm going to just carry on sewing till the end of this piece into the second corner on the second side. Lift the foot up, double check, make sure you're on the corner. Yep. Swing everything back round to where it needs to go. Make sure your piping's facing forward. It's a bit irritating if you have to undo that. And then on down. And into place. Now there's only a little fold on here. That's okay. It's just so that it's slightly folded and it saves the stress on the zip. And then put that into position. Again, fold over, make sure that your folds are all in line. I'm actually going to pin this one. When I say I didn't sew up very far, I only sewed to here. Then I'm going to make sure that those folds and the top of the piping are all in line, which they are. Pop this underneath and I'm going to pull that forward. So I'm going to sew up towards the pin and stop. Remove, fold that back into position like that. So once all of that's folded back into position, I'm going to go over the fold. See, it's folded there. I'm going to go over it. Put the foot down. Reverse first, which will hold everything in position. Move the pin and then sew forward and into that corner. Nick it as you get there. So into the corner, double check, and then swing everything back into place. The first side is now going to be completed. Pull that back and push that forward. There we go. There's no gapping, so it went in perfectly. When you get to the join, just overstitch an inch or a couple of centimetres. So you overstitch your stitches. And that's that one done. Now always check your work. So there's the zip. I'm going to put my finger in there and open it, and then turn it the right way around. The thing you always check is your corners. Make sure that they're nice and tight and no stitching shows. And because my eyesight's a bit crook, I sewed it in a dark blue, so I will be able to see the stitches if I didn't get it in correctly. There's the fold for the zip to hide behind. Perfect. I've got one more to do.